Namaste, Dandavad Pranam. By the instruction and grace of our spiritual master, Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Mahārāja, we are here reading Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Canto 4, the creation of the fourth order, chapter 22, text 37. Tattvam Narendra Jagatam Atatashtusham Cha Dehendriyasu Dishanatmabhir Avritanam Yakshetra Vitapataya Riddhi Vishvag Avi Pratyakchaka Sati Bhagavam Stam Avehismi. Sanat Kumar advised the king, "Therefore, my dear King Pṛthu, try to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is living within everyone's heart, along with the individual soul, in each and every body, either moving or not moving. The individual souls are fully covered by gross material body and subtle body made of life air and intelligence." Purport. In this verse, it is specifically advised that instead of wasting time in the human form of life endeavoring for economic development and sense gratification, one should try to cultivate spiritual values by understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is existing with the individual soul within everyone's heart. The individual soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his Paramatma feature are both sitting within this body, which is covered by gross and subtle elements. To understand this is to attain actual spiritual culture. There are two ways of advancing in spiritual culture: by the method of the impersonalist philosophers, and by devotional service. The impersonalist comes to the conclusion that he and the Supreme Spirit are one, whereas devotees or personalists realize the absolute truth by understanding that because the absolute truth is the supreme predominator, and we living entities are predominated, our duty is to serve him. The Vedic injunctions say, Tat Tvam Asi, you are the same, and so Ham, I am the same. The impersonalist conception of these mantras is that the Supreme Lord or the Absolute Truth and the living entity are one. But from the devotee's point of view, these mantras assert that both the Supreme Lord and ourselves are of the same quality. Tattvamasi ayam atma brahma. Both the Supreme Lord and the living entity are spirit. Understanding this is self-realization. The human form of life is meant for understanding the Supreme Lord and oneself by spiritual cultivation of knowledge. One should not waste valuable life simply engaged in economic development and sense gratification. In this verse, the word charitable is also important. This word is explained in Bhagavad Gita 13.2. Idam shariram kaunteya kshatram iti abhidyate. This body is called kshetra, the field of activities, and the proprietors of the body, the individual soul and the super soul sitting within the body, are called charitable. But there is a difference between the two kinds of charitable. One charitable, or knower of the body, namely the Paramatma, or the super soul, is directing the individual soul. We may rightly take the direction of the super soul. When we rightly take the direction of the super soul, our life becomes successful. He is directing from within and from without. From within, he is directing as Chaitya Guru, or the spiritual master sitting within the heart. Indirectly, he is also helping the living entity by manifesting himself as the spiritual master outside. In both ways, the Lord is giving directions to the living entity so that he may finish up his material activities and come back home, back to Godhead. The presence of the Supreme Soul and the individual soul within the body can be perceived by anyone by the fact that as long as the individual soul and supersoul are both living within the body is always shining and fresh. But as soon as the supersoul and the individual soul give up possession of the gross body, it immediately decomposes. One who is spiritually advanced can thus understand the real difference between a dead body and a living body. In conclusion, one should not waste his time by so-called economic development and sense gratification, but should cultivate spiritual knowledge to understand the supersoul and the individual soul and their relationship. In this way, by advancement of knowledge, one can achieve liberation and the ultimate goal of life. It is said that if one takes to the path of liberation, even rejecting his so-called duties in the material world, he is not a loser at all. But a person who does not take to the path of liberation, yet carefully executes economic development and sense gratification, loses everything. Narada's statement before Vyasadeva is appropriate in this connection. Tyaktva charanam bhujam Hare bhajan apakvota patetato yadi yatrakva vabhadram abud amusyakim kovartapto bhajatam svadharmataha. From Bhagavatam 1.5.17. If a person, out of sentiment for some other reason, takes to the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord, and in due course of time does not succeed in coming to the ultimate goal of life or falls down due to a lack of experience, there is no loss. But for a person who does not take to devotional service yet executes his material duties very nicely, there is no gain. Text 38. Yasmin idham sad asad atmayaya vibhati maya viveka viduti srajivhahi buddhi tam nitya mukta parishudha vishuddha tattvam pratyudha karma kalila prakritim prapadaye. The Supreme Personality of Godhead manifests himself as one with the cause and effect within this body, but one who has transcended the illusory energy by deliberate consideration, which clears the misconception of a snake for a rope, can understand that the Paramatma is eternally transcendental to the material connection and situated in pure internal energy. Thus the Lord is transcendental to all material contamination. Unto him only must one surrender. Purport. This verse specifically stated to defy the Mayavad conclusion of oneness without differentiation between the individual soul and the supersoul. The Mayavad conclusion is that the living entity and the supersoul are one. There is no difference. The Mayavadis proclaim that there is no separate existence outside the impersonal Brahman, and that the feeling of separation is Maya or an illusion, by which one considers a rope to be a snake. The rope and the snake argument is generally offered by the Mayavadi philosophers. Therefore, these words, which represent Vivartavad, are specifically mentioned herein. Actually, Paramatma, the Supersoul, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he is eternally liberated. In other words, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is living within this body along with the individual soul, and this is confirmed in the Vedas. They are likened to two friends sitting on the same tree. Yet Paramatma is above the illusory energy. The illusory energy is called Bahiranga Shakti, or external energy, and the living entity is called Tatastha Shakti, or marginal potency. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, the material energy represented as earth, water, air, fire, sky, etc., and the spiritual energy, the living entity, are both energies of the Supreme Lord. Even though the energies and the energetic are identical, the living entity, the individual soul, being prone to the influence by the external energy, considers the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be one with himself. The word prapadhaye is also significant in this verse, for it refers to the conclusion of Bhagavad Gita 18.66, Sarvadharmam parityaga mamekam sharanam vraja. In another place, the Lord says, Bahunam janmanam mante jnanavamam prapadyante. This prapadaye, or sharanam vraja, refers to the individual's surrender to the Supersoul. The individual soul, when surrendered, can understand that the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although situated within the heart of the individual soul, is superior to the individual soul. The Lord is always transcendental to the material manifestation, even though it appears that the Lord and the material manifestation are one and the same. According to the Vaishnava philosophy, he is one and different simultaneously. The material energy is a manifestation of his external potency, and since the potency is identical with the potent, it appears that the Lord and the individual are one. But actually, the individual soul is under the influence of material energy, and the Lord is always transcendental to it. Unless the Lord is superior to the individual soul, there is no question of prapadaye, or surrender unto him. The word prapadaye refers to the process of devotional service. Simply by non-devotional speculation on the rope and the snake, one cannot approach the absolute truth. Therefore, devotional service is stressed as more important than deliberation or mental speculation to understand the absolute truth. And thus ends our reading for today. We'll continue from text 39 on Wednesday. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Mahārāja ki Jai. Jai Srila Prabhupada, Srila Guru Maharaj, Srila Gurudev, Srila Acharya Dev, Srila Shanta Maharaj ki Jai. Jai Rupa Nuga Guru Varga ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the worldwide devotees, Sama Bhaktivedanta ki Jai. Jai Navadvitam ki Jai, Nishingapali Dham ki Jai, Mayapur Dham ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham ki Jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhavata Ju ki Jai. Ganga Mai, Yamuna Mai ki Jai, Vrindavan Dham ki Jai, Giri Govardhan, Gupta Govardhan Dham ki Jai, Shyam Kund, Radha Kund ki Jai, Tulsi Devi, Bhakti Devi, Vrinda Devi ki Jai, Jai Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Jai Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki Jai, Scientific Sankirtan Yagya ki Jai, Princeton Bhaktivedanta Institute ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Institute ki Jai, Sri Chaitanya Saraswati Mat ki Jai, Nitai Gauda Premanandi Hari Hari Bol, Jai Shrimati Uma Devi Dasi ki Jai.
Sripad Krishna Keshav Prabhu ji ki jai.
Jai Gurudev. I'm just going to